Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our second episode of Dynami-logues with myself, Jennie Morton, and the wonderful Miss Kate Conklin. So we are talking today about, well, we've been doing collaborations and working with people together, kind of separately, but together. And we wanted to just really kind of discuss a little bit more about what that process is like and what it is that people after the fact sort of say what was different about working with us versus working with other practitioners they may have experienced. And I think one of the things that we were coming up with was that, you know, often people are coming in with something they want to solve, right, or a challenge they want to address and explore, but often that's the surface. And we might find them typically, you know, certainly with me and with Kate as well, it's like you think you came in with that and suddenly we're in this whole other thing, and they're like, wait, but actually I start to see the relevance. And it's just not looking at things at the surface level and at face value. And often, you know, certainly with symptoms in the body, where the body expresses symptoms is not often where it's coming from, right? It's effect, not cause. And by changing the symptom or switching it off in some way, you're not getting, it's a band-aid, right? So we really want to get into all the nuanced layers underneath and all the, as I always say, the whys. Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Going down the why rabbit hole until you really get to that root thing. And in doing so, you really start to understand the person as a whole and not just as a problem, you know, or a person that has a problem with something. And that just gets to a deeper level of understanding of who that person is. And therefore they're going to feel much more heard and seen. And that, you know, when we talk about, you know, the therapeutic process, that's a huge part of it. We call it the therapeutic alliance. If that's in place, the body's already in healing mode. So it just goes, yeah, I'm open, I'm ready. So we were just sort of going to share with you today some of the experiences we've had of working in that sort of way.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of my favorite, the voice I hear in my head sometimes of Jennie is like, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Like I kind of have that on as a back pocket reference. And I also, for years I've said, this is where I get to be a professional 2-year-old, is asking why over and over again in the way that maybe we've been discouraged from doing, but actually takes us into, as you say, the heart or the source or the root. And it can be a winding road, right? It's not necessarily that someone walks in and we go, oh, it's down there. It's like we're discovering it and unwinding it together. But whatever, it's following those breadcrumbs.
Yes.
Right. It's what's the experience, right? The first thing that I want to do is appreciate and validate, right? Like honor someone's actual experience, because your experience is never wrong.
Exactly.
And it's actually, I mean, from a nervous system standpoint, as you say, once you've been recognized, heard, understood, seen, and had it accurately reflected back to you, and that's such a key thing, is that a lot of times you might go into a practitioner or a coach or, you know, whomever with, yes, you have an issue you want to resolve or a skill you want to gain, but the essence of that relationship, I believe, is wanting to be seen and have yourself accurately reflected back. And when we don't have that, we get missed.
Yes.
And when we're missed, it's dysregulating.
Yeah.
So as you say, it's deeply regulating to have someone really hear our experience and really reflect back to us with accuracy. So something that both Jennie, you and I do is sort of like, tell me if I have this right.
Yes.
Tell me if I understand. You know, is it sort of this or is it more sort of that? And it's like we spend a fair amount of time hearing the experience, the desires, any history that might come up, and those deeper layers bubble up as we work, right? As we're going, it's like, well, it's kind of this. Oh, well, actually, now that I think about it, there is this other thing. Is that related? And then it's like the next deeper thing has space to come out and talk to us, right?
Yeah. And one of my favorite things is when, you know, because I always say to people, just tell me the story of what's going on. And often, you know, so they start just, often there's a little bit of like, oh, am I allowed to, you know, because in a lot of, you know, particularly in the medical realm, there's just not the time, you know, and so they're trying to just really, you know,
here's the thing,
tracy it down to just like these points that they think are relevant. But when you allow people that space to free form and just go, they'll start going off at what they think is a tangent and go, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And I'm like, your body knows why, you know, and it's like allowing the space for the body to speak its story. And people are often surprised what they're telling you about. Oh, well, there was this thing that happened to me when I was 5. And I don't know why I'm saying it. I'm like, yes, it's relevant.
Yes.
The fact that you're even saying it means it's relevant. So, and then that just, it literally just starts opening up all these fields of possibilities, you know, and it's just like this whole thing expands and we start to, you know, take it away from purely the intellectual or what, you know, Dr. Google has said when I looked up my symptoms or whatever, and really get to that kind of deeper truth. And that's the part I love, and seeing people get kind of excited by that, and that, oh, actually I do know a lot more about this than I thought, because people are often coming with these issues that you know, they feel disempowered by. I don't know what's going on, I don't know why.
Right. Why is my body doing this?
Yeah.
Or why is my body doing this to me?
Yes, exactly. And when they start to just free form like that and come up with things in the moment and allow that, you know, natural intuition to come through, it's so empowering. And then to have, you know, someone like me just getting excited about that. Oh, tell me more. Like, you know, it's like, oh, so it just becomes you know, it's almost like play then. And we all know that the body is so much more receptive to everything when it's in play mode and everything's just fun and creative. So yeah, so that can just be something that I think people find very relieving.
Absolutely. And I think that picking up on what you said about being, you know, deeply playful and creative, and the weird joy that comes with like, oh, there's something going on with the fascia in that part of my, it's like, that's amazing, because, you know, so all these things start to bubble up that you recognize. But I think that especially for each of us working with highly creative people, whether they are performing artists or CEOs or whomever, but where you are literally creating your life, creating businesses, all of this sort of stuff. One of the ways I describe myself as a creative collaborator.
Yes.
And I feel like that is deeply true, that it's not that we're not offering a great deal of value and insight and wisdom and healing and technical skill and all of that. Like you get all of that, but it's also someone who really wants to know, someone who really wants to play and wants to play with what you want to play with. Yeah. Like, why are you here really? We're finding that out together. And I think that one of the things that's come up for me in the last year is exactly as you say, people going, well, is it actually okay to bring this to coaching? Yeah. Like, is it actually okay for me to, because I'm having this thing, does that belong here? And I really, you know, 5-10 years ago, I would have said, this is not the place for that, you know? And so it took me doing a lot of my own work with capacity and resilience, and as you would say, comfort with vulnerability, and really like, what's the word, titrating that in a way where I am so much more regulated. And so my boundaries are both clearer, and also there's much more room for play and intimacy and true collaboration where we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the thing I think that's so delightful and joyful, where it's like, what do you call us? A practitioner, a coach? Am I a life coach? Am I a singing teacher? And it's like, I am a shapeshifter, right? We are bringing all of our resources to bear, and we're working with the person.
Yes.
Right. And I love the way that you said, tell me the story.
Yeah.
Because that is the perfect way to go, everything is welcome.
Yes.
Everything is welcome and necessary for us to do whatever you came here for.
Yeah, and relevant as well.
And relevant.
Yeah, and not to have things because there's so many I mean, the stories I get from people who have been perhaps in the medical model and they say, well, I think it's connected, I think my lower back pain's connected to this knee thing. Oh no, that's nothing to do with it.
Yeah, those things are completely separate and not connected anyway.
There's nothing that connects your lower back to your knee. What it is,
Right.
I only do backs, so nothing else exists.
Right. Right.
So this kind of dot connection as well, because it's denying people's intuition, and there's nothing for me more dangerous and criminal almost than that, because that's what disempowers, that cuts people off from going, well, I thought, so to be able, when they see me connecting dots,
yes,
it gives them permission to say, oh, well, I always felt that. And sometimes, I'll say something that they were like, I thought that, but I was told that it was nothing to do with it, so it's just, again, that validation of your own intuition, because we've just been cut off from it, literally, the education, just, society, all of it. It's in modern times, we've been divorced from those, our intuitive side, and but not only cut off from it, but also shamed for even thinking that.
Yes, absolutely.
So that then we're missing so much information, because if you just listen to all of that, you've got everything you need.
Exactly.
So really, I feel like I'm not adding anything to people. I am removing roadblocks to stuff that they already know, but I'm helping to sort of blow the dust off their own inner knowing, and just giving them permission to trust that again, and realizing we don't need to be running to people all the time. I always say my job is to make myself redundant. It's great.
I love that. And I also think, Jenny, I'm going to push back slightly here.
I do.
But I've heard you say that before. And I believe that the work that you do will never be redundant. I may be projecting because that's how I feel about myself. I'm not simply here to solve problems. I'm here to create collaboratively.
Yeah. And
we will always need people to help us push the edge of what's possible and innovate and improvise. So I see what you're saying in one level, but I don't totally agree.
No, I think what it is, it's like, I'm happy to, be on the journey as a mirror to reflect, but I think it's changing that dynamic of, people say, if I'm like going away for a few weeks, what am I going to do if you're, that kind of thing. It's like, no, you're self-sufficient. I'm here to just bounce ideas off every now and then, and I'll always be there for that. It's like, I would much rather be helping people with prevention and maintenance than fixing some big
then waiting until there's a crisis, in which case what I always think is it's a really hard time to learn.
Yes.
During crisis, and
it's in firefighting mode at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it happens, but ultimately I don't want to start a relationship with a client there if we can possibly help it. Which is why one of the things that I'm always asking is, what do you want? What do you want in this moment? What if you didn't know it was impossible, or if you didn't know that you're just gonna have to manage this thing for the rest of your life, right? Because you and I both have experience with things that are like, you've been told that will be with you forever, and it just vaporized. So if you didn't know better, what would you want? If we had a magic wand, what do you want now? What do you want today in this moment? And the same thing, as we dust off those desires, as we keep asking with curiosity, more information comes. And that's one of the things that's so, I think, apparent, but tricky maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not tricky to describe about working with me or working with Jenny, that we are sort of like a big, how do I put it? Like a big corona of antennae, right?
I love her description.
Yeah, that's about right. Okay. It's about right. So that we are omnisensing your whole being And that receptivity, and not in a way that we're like over relating or, I mean, it's quite regulated, it's quite safe, but in the sense that we're getting information that we don't even know how we're getting it. And I know from working with Jennie, having her work with me, that she'll sort of pop up with something like, this is what's this about? And I'm like, oh, you're right on the money. I don't know where you're getting that. And for me, I mean, I would love to hear your experience. We've talked about it a little bit, but for me, something people ask me is like, how do you know what to suggest? How do you know which idea to share or, suggest a rehearsal or something? And for me, it's like all the ideas are dancing.
Yeah.
And they sort of pick. Something will come up, and if that's not the sweet spot for the client, we have a lot of other options.
Yeah.
It's not, I need you to justify, I need you to validate the worthiness of my idea by having this be the right answer. It's like, oh no, I'm Shiva with all the art. Like, we can just pull from wherever. So I'd love to hear sort of a little bit about what your experience is with what I'm calling omnisensing in a corona of antennae.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's one of those things. I used to do a lot of practitioner training, when I was back in the UK, training like PTs and osteopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those questions, what do I do for, what's the entry point?
Yes.
And that's something that really does come with experience, because you can go by the book of follow these protocols on every patient, but, everybody's different, and everybody, responds to different information in different ways. So I think, the years of experience that we both have allowed us to kind of gather enough kind of global information about, people that are anxious tend to respond better to this as an entry point versus this, or so you start to, there's no one size fits all 6-step program to, even if I have 6 people in with exactly the same, I don't know, rotator cuff strain or something, my approach will be different for all of them. So it's learning that, and with the hands-on work that I do, we often, people are like, well, I've got pain here and this is sore and there's all these different kind of spots going on, like where do you begin? And again, something that comes with experience, there's something that we call the key lesion, right? We tend to call these lesions that are going on in the body. What's the key lesion? And if you get to that and help that to resolve, all the others fall into place, so you don't have to go around and do them all. And so, I can say that there's a sort of an experience of just having had your hands on several thousand people over the years, that you figure it. But there's also there's a sixth sense, right? And I won't, I used to try and justify it with something I could explain
totally
in rational terms, but I will now step up and go, there's just something that comes in, just says go there.
Yes.
And I can literally see somebody walking down the street and go, what's the going on? I want to go to the L3. I just it's just information it's just like a fast track that I used to have to go through several steps to get to, and now for whatever reason I have access to a much more of a shortcut version for that. So again, it's me trusting my intuition whilst encouraging the person I'm working with to trust their intuition. So we're both doing this simultaneously, and when we both do that and we both go, oh, that just feels right, well then you got it right. So again, that's that co-creation. So by me, rather than, whereas years ago I would try and justify very rationally what I was doing with someone, because I felt like I don't have a right to use that technique or go to that place if I can't rationally justify it. Now to sort of demonstrate that, and people always say to me, how did you know to go there? I didn't even know I had that thing going on there. And you went there and it's like, oh, I didn't know that. How did you? And they think it's psychic. For me, it's just pattern recognition. It's just trusting that there is, I feel like bodies are talking to me. They go, the person saying, well, I think it's my shoulder, and the body's going, no, here. I'm just going, I think I'm being told to go here. So it's listening on many levels. And like you say, it comes back to that corona of antennae open. Well, this antenna is telling me, actually, I want to go to that right hip rather than your left shoulder, because there's some conversation going on here. So trusting those skills, knowing you've got the rational stuff to back it up as well, because you can normally retro justify things when you figure it out.
Yes, exactly. It's like, okay, there's a logic to it, but the logic is actually slower.
Yes, much slower
than that fast track.
Yeah, and to trust the fast track, and then the process is much less seamless, much more seamless, I should say. But the person also has that, again, validation when you go somewhere that there's no logical reason that why we went there, but then when you do, they go, oh, and the body knows. It just goes, oh, yeah. There's this drop that you feel in people when they drop out of their head and go, oh, that's just right. I had no idea what you just did, but that felt right.
Yeah, and again, that's a recognition on a whole other level. It sounds hierarchical, but there's a recognition that's like, oh, wow, I wasn't even seeing that. And it is the biggest gift. I really think it is a basic human need. It is a basic human need to be seen and appreciated and recognized and validated. And also, of course, we're in constant conversation with our clients so that we're validating as we go. But often we don't even, I don't know, for you, I imagine this is true. I know when I work with you, it's true. It's like, you don't even need to ask because I'm telling you. I'm like, oh my God, what is it? And same thing like with singers, I'm always going to say, so how did that go for you? What do you experience? But I heard it in the sound, and I heard it in the potential of the sound when they were coordinating. I already had the experience of like, oh, this is where this is going. And then it's like, we use the science part to just go, are we, everybody good with that? Is that what we wanted? Just so that we're being conscientious and clean. But yeah, a lot of times it really is the richness and the sensitivity, right? Because this is for both of us, we have I would say high level, deep level of sensitivity that is just the way it is. And then we've also honed that, right? So,
yeah, because sensitivity can sometimes be overwhelming. All artists are by definition sensitive, because that allows you to have that absolute keen sense of hearing, that, felt sense of something, the movement, nuance that you need as a dancer, for instance. But it can also be a very noisy place, because you're letting in a lot of sensory information.
Yeah, that's what I love to say about being sensitive. It's not that I'm reactive, it's that I am getting more sensory input than other people.
But then the skill is to learn to be able to be in the presence of all that information, which can be noisy.
Yeah.
And be discerning about what should I listen to, and what's just noise, or what's most relevant to this situation. So it's the ability to sift and filter that noise, which is something that, creative people, there's, that whole argument of, is creativity nature or nurture? Are you born that way, or is it developmental? And the science says that it's really a combination of the two. But one of the features of creativity, what predicts creativity, is actually a structural difference in brain anatomy to do with the thalamus. And the thalamus is the area of the brain that filters all those signals that come in. And it's been shown that basically creative people are less able to filter that sensory information. There's a structural anatomical difference that does that. So what artists have to do, and this is a lot of the work I sometimes do with artists who are having emotional, instability or anxiety and things, because when there's too much noise, you get anxious, right?
And you can start to do what I call a full body wince. It's like you just get a little tight, because it's like, I can't let all this in, and it feels
overwhelming. So a lot of it is learning how to do your own filtration. We have to manually filter, because we're not getting it as the built-in filter is not working quite so well. So learning to manually filter. So I think that's what we've both done in our professional work. So by modeling that for people as well, it's also showing them how to handle that in their own lives as well. So yeah, that ability to be in the presence of all of that, not be overwhelmed, but also pick out what's salient and let go of whatever isn't salient in that moment.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, this idea of walking down the street and picking up like, oh, there's something going on in L3 over there. That sort of, that, I remember when I first started doing this work, it definitely was, I'm just getting a lot of information about everyone. And it's interesting because the more I get into energetic work and sort of being connected in that way and being aware in that way, the more I can just pick and choose what I want to receive and when I want to receive it. Because in a, crowded restaurant or something, I don't want to pick up every detail about everybody, and I can just decide.
Yes.
I was on a gig one time years ago and someone said, oh, you're an Alexander technique teacher. Are you like judging all of us, and assessing? And I was like, oh, no, you have to pay me. Like,
I don't give that
not
out.
that I judge and assess, but it's like, I'm here singing, so I'm attending to that. I'm certainly paying attention to your residents. I'm certainly paying attention to that which helps me do my job.
Yes.
But I'm not here in that capacity. I can make that choice. And it's so empowering. Okay, couple things I wanted to pick up on before we go. One is, I think we both feel strongly that it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, not ethical, or at least not ethical to us, to disempower artists. Would you like to comment?
Just yes.
Okay, because I think that, what I call it is being lost in method, right? You go into an osteo, you go into an Alexander technique teacher, you go into a voice teacher, a movement person, whatever. They have their way of doing things, and you're sort of put through that system rather than you are your own unique biosphere, your own system. And that's what we're there to work with.
Yes.
Not to just repeat the technique. This is why I don't call myself an Alexander technique teacher very much, because that usually, if anyone knows, either they don't know what it is, or if they know what it is, it comes with an expectation that there's this sort of rote process. And for me, it's like, no, all that did was help me understand what matters. As you say, what's relevant, what the relationships are, what can lead to what. But I'm not here to do a technique. I'm here to work with you.
Yeah, and that's what's quite interesting for me, moving from the UK to the US, because a lot of people here don't know what an osteopath is. Or they have a very different idea, because osteopathy in the US is completely different really to anywhere else in the world. So it kind of gave me carte blanche in a way, so that people weren't coming with expectations. They were coming because they knew that I worked with artists and that I was in the field of performing arts medicine and that I had a reputation in that. So they came because somebody said, go and see her, as opposed to, I need to find an osteopath and look it up in the phone book, It shows my age, doesn't it? Look it up in the phone book. Go to the yellow pages and look for an osteopath. So it kind of helped me dissolve that barrier, because again, when people are coming in with an expectation of what's going to happen, it can be limiting and as you were saying, disempowering for them. And for me, that it's what I always call the pharmaceutical model. Even if you take the drug out of the equation, people are still going, I need you to fix something for me. I am the lesser of this equation. You are the arbiter of, I'm handing over my power to you for you to fix
and my responsibility.
Right.
And the idea that there's something wrong, as opposed to, what we're always listening for is like, how is this absolutely perfect?
Yes.
How is this, of course, what's happening?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. This is just the end of a stream of logic that can be traced back. So it's that notion of, and it's something that I made a real shift in with people, because people were still coming to me, oh, well, I need you to fix my shoulder, I need you to work on my back. And it's like, that's not really what I do. This is teamwork, and you need to take responsibility, and there's a lot of things that you need to be doing and exploring to resolve this, or, you know, because people will say, well, I keep going to my chiropractor or whatever, I go every 2 weeks or something, and I'm like, well, is that just outsourcing?
Right. How is this moving you along?
Yeah, there may be a reason for. There are times when, yes,
Yeah,
you do need to have more, you know, regular appointments, but it's, you know, if the person keeps coming back with the same issue, from my perspective as a practitioner,
yeah,
ask a better question. You know, you haven't answered the question, so ask a better question and change your line of thinking and keep questioning all the time. And, you know, when I used to train practitioners, I used to say, the moment you think you know what's going on, get another job, right?
Yeah.
Because
you're not receiving information there.
You shut down, and then you start seeing what you want to see and treating what you want to treat, as opposed to what is actually going on. It's that old thing, you know,
and again, that's being missed. And it's the cost in terms of emotional energy, you know, the effect it has, especially on an artist, to be missed like that is, I mean, most of us have, I would, maybe I'm projecting again, but I think many of us have a wound around that as artists anyway.
Yeah.
And so to have the person you go to help you with your art, whether it's a vocal coach or whatever, not really, you know, give you something that you're like, yeah, I know that's the typical done thing. As you're saying, the pharmaceutical model, I mean, the little bit of pedagogy that I studied in undergrad was very much, you know, the model was diagnosing vocal faults and prescribing a solution.
Right.
And it's just like, let's just light that on fire right now. Like, let's just, you know.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is, it just is. For people, is it this? Or is it, it just is.
It is. Yeah, it's neutral.
Is it working for you? Is it not working for you? That's all the question is. And if it's not working for you, let's find another way around it. But, you know, it might work for you in certain circumstances. You know, people are looking for like a one size fits all, because that's kind of what society trains us to think, you know. And I always say it's not. It's, you have a toolkit, and in any given situation, in any given environment, you can put these things together. And what you might say, yeah, don't ever do that. Well, actually, in this situation, you might want to just do that for a little bit to get.
Yes, exactly.
So it's just, you know, not to put have this dualistic black and white, you know, approach to things, right, wrong, good, bad, and take, you know, I'm so careful to take judgment labels out, you know, and it's not always, you know, it's not always easy to do that when you're working with someone, not say, oh, that was good, you know, well, that means that something else was bad, you know, well, that worked. Yeah. How did that feel? You know, what's the felt experience of that? What did the body think of that? Right. So as you start to dissolve that languaging, everything is available, and everything is legitimate. It's just what is appropriate or proportionate to any given situation. And you then are the wizard that goes,
you're the running the faders.
I always say, it's like, if you've only got 2 ingredients, your cooking's going to be pretty boring, right? But when you've got all these ingredients available to you, you can make a recipe for any given situation that is nuanced and is appropriate and exactly what you need nutritionally in that moment, right? If you eat the same thing 7 days a week, then the body doesn't do well with that, right? The body needs variety. So it's kind of teaching people to be cooks and alchemists. Well, not teaching them to be, but, you know, giving them permission to be cooks and alchemists, and helping them to develop a big toolkit for that. And then they figure out the rest.
And that's, and one of the things that I am adamant about is artists need to trust themselves.
Yes. Comes back to the empowerment. Yeah.
Right. Back to like that intuition is, you can trust that.
Yes.
You can trust yourself. You may not understand it immediately or in all of its complexity, but it is trustworthy. Your experience is trustworthy.
Yes.
And your desires are trustworthy. There's nothing wrong with you if you want to do something in a certain way, you know, that it hasn't been authorized by a vocal coach or done before. It's like, well, this is your desires. This is your incarnation and instrument. you're here to do it the way that you're called to do it. At least let's see what that is.
Yeah, and the more people experiment, you create a safe container for them to experiment in, then the confidence builds. And when they see the things that come out,
Exactly.
when you're not you're not layering everything with all these, oh, should have done that and shouldn't do, I was told I should never do this, I was told I was not good at that, all those myths and legends that we carry around with us. When you create a space where we like, just get rid of all of those and just experiment, just play, is the only way you can really get to trust that intuitive side, being in a place where you are safe and free to do so and explore. And then the more you become familiar with that, you can be on stage in the middle of a performance and be shifting and adapting.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, that's the bliss of performing.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that constant little ooh, 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 just like wave finding like what's happening, where's the sparkle, where's the sweet spot, like that. You can rehearse being available for that. You can rehearse asking for it, but you can't rehearse, this is a fixed framework and I'm going to take that on. So it's like you are doing something rehearsed in order to be spontaneous.
Yes. Yeah, every performance should be unique. There's no, otherwise you might as well just put the CD on, right?
Right, exactly.
Why are you on the stage? Why are all these people sitting there? They want they want you to be human. They need you to be human, because the whole mirror neuron system that's activated when an audience is engaging, it's not a passive process. You are just doing art for them, it is biologically an interactive process. They are mirroring all your movements, even the way you're using your voice, with their mirror neuron system, and firing all those muscles, even though they're not moving. The signal to those muscles is firing. And that is connected to the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. And so that you are literally taking them on a movement journey that will conjure up this emotional narrative. But if you're locked in the cookie cutter kind of more left brain painting by numbers performance, you're not going to give them that gut hit. They'll listen to you and go, oh, that was technically lovely, that was an interesting experience. But they're not in that like, oh, I just over it, that was an hour, I felt like that was 5 minutes, or and they're left with some emotional residue. They go away, still their whole cellular system is still
you're different. You're different when, as you say, your whole cellular system is different because we've been together in some extraordinary way. We've had a journey. We are all different now. Yeah. That's why I say live performance will never die, because it does not, when you're doing it this way, there is nothing else like it. No. And it's like looking at a picture of food and eating, it's that different from a biological perspective. And it is a nutrition, it is a nutrient, art is a nutrient that we all need. But as I say to all artists, like any vegetable or whatever, its nutritional value and its nutritional density is based upon the soil in which it is grown. So your job is to tend the soil. And so what we do in a coaching environment is help the artist tend their soil, trust the soil and trust that process, and be a sort of a microcosm of mirroring that an audience is doing. Yes. So that then they can just, scale that up to being on stage, but it's still a known and felt experience that feels comfortable and vulnerable, right? Comfortable and vulnerable, exactly. And it is this availability that is deeply sovereign, right? I choose to be available to this group of people at this particular time, in this particular place. Let's play. Yeah. Right. And I am, as a performer, I am confident, right? Meaning with fidelity, confidence, with fidelity, I am being fiddle, that's not it. I'm being faithful to my plan, and I am completely dialed into my freedom of choice at any moment. Yes. This is one of my favorite things to do, is locate from stage, locate where the exit sign is, just so I kind of know we could all choose to leave. Yeah. We want to choose. And as soon as, because again, as you're saying, the audience mirroring, having a felt lived experience. You know, I get to watch, you know, a hand balancer or an acrobat do things that I can't specifically do. But to the extent that I understand bending over backwards, or that I understand rolling forward, my system is literally having a lived experience.
Yeah.
And so the more available we are to each other, and of course, I always talk about this with audience, like you can invite your audience to be with you, that gives them freedom of choice. And then we have this, what do we want to do? Do we want to play together? And everybody gets to buy into their own level of how far they want to go. And I do think that there is a responsibility of performers to provide safety.
Yes.
Right. It's you know, to quote Robert Sapolsky, there's a reason roller coasters aren't 3 weeks long. I mean, if you are not, if you are not creating safety for yourself, I don't trust you, and I'm not going to get on the ride with you, because, you know, all of the, we should have another one on that. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biology of that, of safety and it is a collective experience. It's not, it's not an individual thing. But sort of coming back to that sort of, you know, vulnerability in performance, you know, another thing I say to artists is, you don't train to be perfect, right? To be able to hit and be, you know, and you've got this thing that you can just reproduce every
right. With machine-like precision.
You train for adversity, right? Because the light could, I mean, all the things that have happened to me when I'm on stage, you know, lights are falling, or, you know, somebody's phone goes off in the audience.
For those listening, her stories are truly hilarious. I've heard some of them. Truly hilarious.
I have some old war stories, you know, but shenanigans that happens on stage. But it's, so you've got to be ready for, you know, if you're in this rigid, like everything works, if nobody moves and nobody breathes, and we're, you know, if we're a hair this way, then the whole thing crumbles. Then when the gel falls out of the light, or someone's phone goes off in the audience, you're done, you're thrown, right?
Yes, exactly.
There's that ability to be able to adapt to anything that happens environmentally around you whilst you are performing. And as most performers know, you know, sometimes you've got a whole other thing going on in your head about whether you left the iron on at home whilst, of course, so it's training that's important, so that you don't get, you know, trying to just be like, I'm fully concentrating on everything I'm doing. That's actually not going to work for you.
You get on the track, and if you need to turn, you're like, I can't turn. I think too that what's important is that it's not that we're saying the objective or is the adversity, right? We're not saying like, be ready for chaos at any time. Like, not, you know, it really is availability to say yes to what is happening in a coordinated way. So for instance, I mean, I was gave a TEDx talk, and there was some kind of massive explosive sound in the speakers. And it was, the timing of it was fantastic. It was so comic that I just heard that and I was like, I got to roll with this. And I, you know, I made a joke about it, and, you know, because I'm with the people in the room, and the people in the room are going, was that not supposed to happen?
Yeah.
And as soon as I go, that wasn't supposed to happen. Now we're all tight. Nobody's receptive. Nobody's playing. So if I look around and go, okay, everyone's okay, no one's hurt. Yeah. We get to say yes to that. And we get to play with it and make it okay for everyone. Yes. Right? As opposed to, I'm trying to hide the reality. It's like, no, the thing exploded. I don't know what happened, but, you know, it was funny timing. And of course, in the thing, they cut it out. So if I had winced and tightened and been, you know, strange, the whole rest of my talk would have been like, what, did something happen in there? Like, what's going on? As opposed to like, I just laughed and went on, you know? Yeah. So I was thinking in the shower this morning about an instance when someone comes in maybe with one thing, one idea, and there's a whole other network of things going on. And I just wanted to share an example from my experience. And I would love to invite you to share something from your experience, the kind of thing that comes up. So for instance, if someone comes in with a tuning issue, some of the things I'm of course gonna listen to them. I'm gonna hear, well, what do you want? Is there something that you want that's different? Is it that you're getting feedback from elsewhere? Like what is telling you I have a pitch issue, or I have there's something with the tuning? Because our perception is important, but not necessarily correct at all times. And the feedback from other people is important and not necessarily accurate.
Yes.
It's like we need to sort of get what's at play in the system here. And then I'm going to, omnisense and observe what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing. Because what's often not understood or actively misunderstood is how tuning actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this a lot, but the way that tuning is sometimes practiced is a very manual, manipulative way of doing things. And so the questions that are coming up for me when that comes up in my practice is, okay, well, how are you, what is your definition of tuning? And I don't necessarily mean that intellectually, but like whole self, what are you doing in response to the idea of tuning and rote? Are you doing rote repetition, in which case there may be like just some actual fatigue of like ear fatigue or muscular fatigue? Are you approaching it? Are you resonating in a way that is maybe dampening the vibration of the bones, right? So if the muscles are, if you're trying to manipulate the tuning, you may be doing that with muscular effort that is dampening the vibrancy and the vibration of the bones, which in that case can often distort what you're hearing.
Yes.
And so you are probably in tune with what you're hearing, but that is not the purity of tuning that you're looking for, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. And so we're looking at, okay, so how does your whole idea create a plan, and how do we shift that plan by shifting your idea, by giving you relevant information about how tuning actually works and how tuning can work for you in this moment.
Yeah.
So that's an example from my world of a lot of times what people are doing to solve the problem is actually taking them in the direction they don't want to go.
Right.
Because it actually exacerbates that distortion. And it's also very regulating for people who've been told there's some kind of a pitch issue to go, no, there's not a pitch issue. There's a coordination issue, but that's not a big deal. We can just address that.
Yeah.
We can just make it so it's easier for you to do what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it comes back to that, the story that people are telling themselves.
Yes.
They get so locked in this story of, oh, well, this is that, and this person told me that they're not giving themselves permission to look at it another way again.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when you said, an issue with tuning. I was just thinking, everything's an issue with tuning. We're just a vibrational field. Someone's got shoulder pain. It's a tuning issue. Right?
Exactly.
Those photons and protons are oscillating in an incoherent way, and so we're coming back to tuning. So everything in the body is tuning. And
when we say we work in a slightly different way than other coaches, that would be a good example. I think.
We're at the quantum level. We're not.
Yes, we actually are at the quantum level, because that is mostly what we're dealing with.
Yeah, there is no matter.
Matter
is not, it's just a vibrational field. So that's actually quite useful when I'm working with a musician and vocalists who understand the concept of tuning and frequency and measuring in hertz. You can measure the output of the body in hertz as well. So it's like, if that tune's dissonant to you, let's harmonize it, right? Let's find a way to find harmony with that. So again, using language that people understand to help them frame something that they feel they don't understand is a really useful tool. And it's again just coming back to that idea. I think what you were saying there is stop telling yourself that this is the problem or the issue,
Yeah.
and give yourself permission to, you know, see that in a much broader context, and therefore find that you've got many different entry points to improve that situation for you. And yeah, and just if you can bring everything back to this idea of, is something, you know, in a consonant resonance or a dissonant resonance, it's sort of a universal that can be applied to so many different things, and again give you you know, it's validating your own felt sense of something, rather than I don't know intellectually that what's going on. It's like, yeah, but you can feel what's going on with the body. And then, you know, when I'm giving people self-treatment techniques, particularly for fascial issues, it's all about vibration. You know, people want to bash into their tissues. It's like, you know, a lot of people's idea of treatment is abuse, but actually learning to find the right frequency of vibration for a tissue and feeling it just release. It's like, oh, it's that easy. And so we just need to be mindful, like you say, if there's tension in the body, it is going to alter bone conduction and also your perception. And again, symptoms are all perception. When you really dive into pain and how that's transmitted. I was actually to a thing on music as medicine, a lecture on that the other day, from a guy who's a sound acoustic engineer, but he's done all this research into health, you know, the health of sound healing. And the recent research shows that how nerves conduct signals, which is pain as well, you know, one of the senses that is transmitted along nerves, it's actually an acoustic signal. It is sound. We think of it as electrical current, but the electricity is generated by sound waves. So
it's so cool.
So when you speak to people in the, you know, the pain you're feeling is just a sound wave, and it's, you know, the note that's a little off, right? So can we just tune it?
Yeah, right. And as you say, not by beating up on it, not by making it wrong, but just by asking. I mean, this is one of the things my clients get obsessed with, is like, I didn't know I could just ask for stuff.
And listen as well, that refined listening that you have as a musician, to listen to sound and know when something feels, you know, in harmony or whatever. That's the same for your body. Just listen to the body in the same way, and you've already got those, you know, super skills available to you. Just apply them.
Ooh, what a gift. What a gift. I love that. Okay, I feel like that's a great place to pause for now.
Leave that little idea of thinking about your nervous system in terms of sound waves.
Well, there you go. You never know where we're going to go, but it's usually pretty fabulous, I think. So thank you, Jennie Morton, for being with me today. It's always a pleasure. And for those watching this, if you have specific things that are coming up that you want us to explore, talk about, answer, send them our way.
I'm in.
We're more than happy.
Give us something to talk about. We're as happy as you like.
That's right. Happy as Larry. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.